most people that are still alive that were around in the 60s probably do identify with me, and they've probably had their troubles too and kind of battled them out.
Welcome to our channel, where we delve into the lives of music legends who have left an indelible mark on the world. Today we're exploring the life and death of Stevie Wright, the electrifying frontman of the Easybeats. A story of extraordinary talent, meteoric rise and heartbreaking decline. Now, let's get started. Stevie Wright, born Stephen Carlton Wright on 20th December 1947 in Leeds, England, to parents George and Dorothy Wright. Wright and his family traveled to Australia when he was 9 years old. They were there for a number of years. In the years leading up to their relocation to Sydney in 1960, they made their house in Villa Wood, which was situated closely adjacent to a hostel for migrants. At the time of their relocation, they had been residing in Melbourne for a brief period of time. After Stevie's early interest in rock and roll, he went on to lead local bands like the Outlaws, and later Chris Langdon and the Langdells in the early 1960s. Stevie's infatuation with rock and roll began at an early age. Stevie's passion for rock and roll began at a young age, and has continued to show. In the beginning, the Langdells were a shadow-style surf band, but after being introduced to the music of the Beatles by their friends, the Bee Gees, they transformed into a band that was virtually indistinguishable from the Beatles. It was in the middle of 1964 that Wright was performing with the Langdells at Susie Wong's Disco in Sydney. It was around this time that he came into touch with two Dutch immigrants named Hendrikus van den Berg and Dingerman van der Sluis. The Netherlands were the country of origin for both of these persons. The members of the new band that Wright and his pals were putting together shared Wright's excitement for the music of the Beatles. Wright was creating the band with his buddies. George Young, a guitarist from Glasgow, who also resided at Villa Wood, was encouraged to become a member of the group by Wright, who issued an invitation to him. The connection that Young shared with Wright was the driving force behind their coming together. It was during the process of evaluating a number of vocalists, one of whom being John Bell, who was a member of the upcoming band The Throb, that the band came to the conclusion that Wright was the appropriate frontman for them. Bell was one of the singers that the band evaluated. As a consequence of a fortuitous meeting that took place on a train, drummer Snowy Fleet became a member of the band, which ultimately resulted in the band's disintegration. This was the beginning of the Easybeats, a band that was formed with the intention of expressing gratitude to the musical influences that had a significant impact on them in the past. The moniker Little Stevie Wright would continue to be used by Wright, despite the fact that he would eventually desire to be known by his given name, Stephen. Wright maintained his usage of the nickname throughout his life. Wright was given this name because he had the appearance of a youngster and was of a little stature. For this reason, he was given this nickname. In light of the fact that the Easybeats were able to get a residency at the Beatle Village Club a few years ago, Ted Albert, who is both a music publisher and a producer, had a particular interest in the band. In 1965, the band released their very first song, which was titled For My Woman, and it was the first song that they had published. Albert Productions was the band's record label, and EMI Parlophone was the record company that their records were distributed by. It was at position No. 33 on the international charts in Australia that the song was able to achieve. Following the publication of this, the next song to be published was the mega hit She's So Fine, which ultimately reached the third position on the charts after it had already been released. They were given the nickname Easy Fever by the Australian press due to the fact that their concerts consistently produced a substantial degree of fan enthusiasm, which was comparable to the phenomena that is known as Beatlemania. Wedding Ring was their second single, and it was released on August 26, 1965. It was a song that was uplifting and focused on the wedding ceremony. Following a similar trajectory, it made its way up the charts, finally reaching position number 7. On September 23, 1965, the band's first album, which was titled Easy, was made accessible to the general public for the first time. The original songs that were featured on the album were written by the members of the band, who were also responsible for the album's production. The guitarist George Young and the vocalist Wright were responsible for contributing to the writing of 8 of the songs that were included on the album, which included a total of 14 tracks. A return to a blues-based vibe was apparent with the third song, which was titled Sad and Lonely and Blue. This song was heard in the middle of the song. Despite this, the song did not make it into the top 10 and reached its highest position at number 21 in the music charts. Both Wedding Ring and Sad and Lonely and Blue were included in the band's second album, which was named It's Too Easy and was released on March 24, 1966. Both of these songs were included in the album. This record was released by the band themselves. If you want to feel good about yourself, You should go to the ladies who are in charge of singles. You should do this since they make you feel good. As a result of her efforts, the band was able to regain their position in the top 10 by achieving positions No. 4 and No. 3 on their respective charts. In addition, the creative relationship between Wright and Young was responsible for the creation of songs for other artists. One example of this is the song Step Back, which was a success for Johnny Young in 1966 and reached number 1 on the charts in the same year. Despite the fact that he was still performing in Australia at the beginning of 1966, manager Mike Vaughan was successful in securing a recording contract with United Artists Records, which was located in New York City. In spite of the fact that Vaughan was still in Australia at the time, this occurred. At the time that they were in the midst of moving to London, they taped a television special for the 7 network called the Easybeats. This was their goodbye television program. For the show, the Easybeats served as the director. The Coca-Cola special is another name for this exact program that broadcasts on television. On July 10, 1966, the band landed in the United Kingdom, which marked the beginning of their journey to that country. The extended play EP known as Easy Fever was released by Albert Productions in the month of August of the same year by the same company. In a short amount of time, it attained the highest position on the singles charts in Australia. It was in November of the same year that they released the album Volume 3, which featured the single Sorry, which climbed to the top of the charts the following year. It was a successful record overall. Both Wright and Young were responsible for the composition of the song, which was penned by them. While they were in London, the band collaborated with Ted Albert to record a variety of songs at the Abbey Road Studios, which is owned and operated by Electro Music. The recording of these tunes took place when they were working in London. On the other hand, United Artists Records came to the conclusion that these recordings were not appropriate, and as a consequence, Albert was removed in his role as the producer. Shel Talmy, a freelance producer, who is most known for his work with The Who and the Kinks, was the next person they collaborated with thereafter. After that, they collaborated with him as the second person. In a statement, United Artists indicated that the band's songwriting was not sophisticated enough to be fit for the market in the United Kingdom that they were aiming for. The song Come and See Her was performed by Wright and Young, and on July 15th, the label in the United Kingdom published the single version of the song they had collaborated on. In terms of performance, however, the record did not fare exceptionally well against expectations. Vander, who was born in the Netherlands and is now more proficient in English, succeeded Wright as Young's songwriting collaborator. Vander is now more proficient in British English. In the capacity of songwriting partner, Vander became Young's collaborator. Following careful study of a wide range of potential possibilities, the band's producer, Shel Talmy, arrived to the opinion that Friday on My Mind would be the single that would be the most appropriate for the band to release. IBC Studios in London was the location where the song was recorded during the month of September, and Wright was the one who was responsible for supplying the lead vocals for the song. Friday on My Mind was released on October 14, 1966, and it quickly became a huge hit all over the world, reaching number 6 on the charts in the United Kingdom. The song was titled Friday on My Mind. The song was made available to the public in the United States. It achieved number 1 on the charts in Australia, and it also charted in a number of other countries, including Canada, where it reached number 13, the United States, where it reached number 16, Germany, the Netherlands, and France. In Australia, it was the most successful song of all time. As a consequence of the combined sales of more than 1 million copies to consumers located all over the world, a gold record was accomplished. With his exceptional stage talents, which included the flying tambourine and acrobatic leaps, Wright has distinguished himself as one of the most compelling performers in the local music industry. His performances have garnered him a lot of attention. One of the most prominent skills he possessed was the ability to captivate crowds. It was his appealing appearance and natural flair that served as a source of motivation for himself, and it was also the source of inspiration for a large number of vocalists who followed in his footsteps at the time. In spite of the fact that the Easybeats brought out Who'll Be the One in March of 1967, the song did not achieve the level of success necessary to be featured on the charts in the United Kingdom. Furthermore, it achieved the 14th position in the rankings in Australia, which is a significant achievement. Prior to the release of their album, which was published in the United States under the title Friday on My Mind, the band embarked on a tour with the Rolling Stones in Europe. In the meanwhile, the record was made available to the public in the United Kingdom with the title Good Friday. After drummer Snowy Fleet quit the band because of obligations to his family, the band went on to record Heaven and Hell, which likewise failed to chart in the UK, but eventually achieved number 1. Heaven and Hell was a hit. As a result, Heaven and Hell was a tremendously successful film. In Australia, There are 8 of them that may be discovered. During the time that the band was on tour in the United States, Fleet was replaced by Tony Cahill, and Gene Pitty joined the band as a member of the musical ensemble. The band came to New York to record the album Falling Off the Edge of the World, after they had completed the recording of the music for the album Round My Head in London. Once it was over, they went back to London to record the songs that would be included on the album. Some of their followers were disappointed with the song Hello, How Are You due to the fact that it had a more subdued tone, which contributed to the song's success in the United Kingdom, where it managed to reach number 20. They collaborated with United Artists to make their second album, which was named Vigil. The album featured a variety of songs, some of which had recently been released as mainstream successes, while others had not yet been made accessible to the general public. The song Good Times included Steve Marriott and Nicky Hopkins, and it was so remarkable that it even startled Paul McCartney. Nicky Hopkins was also performing on the song. There was a contribution by Nicky Hopkins to the song, all the way up to the number 18 slot in Australia. Land of Make Believe was able to achieve widespread success. On the other hand, their instrumental B-side, which was written and given the name Lay Me Down and did not precisely perform in a satisfactory manner on the charts in Australia. During the course of the year 1968, disagreements amongst members of the band began to come to the surface. The fact that Vanda and Young were becoming increasingly autonomous as creative forces was also a crucial influence, despite the fact that substance misuse played a role in the situation with regard to the creative process. On the other hand, despite the fact that they were proficient in a broad variety of instruments and studio methods, the two persons started working separately, creating a substantial quantity of music and producing their own material. They never got together for anything other than live performances or studio recordings at Central Sound Studios. That was the only time they ever got together. Both of them were unwilling to travel a great deal, and they only met together on a very irregular basis altogether. Polydor Records was the record label that the Easybeats officially signed with in 1969, following their departure from United Artists and Albert Productions, which were their prior record labels. The recording of their debut song for Polydor, St. Louis, took place at Olympic Studios in London. The studio is located in London. During the recording procedure, producer Ray Singer was present at the location. In spite of the fact that it did not chart in the United Kingdom, it nevertheless managed to retain the top spot on the global charts. The total number of people living in Australia is 21. Approximately about the same time, the band terminated its relations with manager Mike Vaughan in order to accomplish the same goal. During their time in London, Vanda and Young made the decision to establish a home studio, with the intention of producing demos. This decision ultimately led to the publication of the album Friends. They started their voyage as part of their farewell tour, which started in September and included stops in both Europe and Australia. Other locations on their tour included Australia. Together, the distribution of illegal demo recordings by Albert Productions and the shifting trends in the music industry were two factors that contributed to the difficulties that they encountered along the way. On the other hand, they were successful in overcoming these challenges. Following the conclusion of their final concert, which was held in Orange, New South Wales, the band made the decision to end their collaboration and no longer play together. As a result of the disintegration of the Easybeats, Wright investigated a variety of alternative career avenues, the most of which were inside the music industry, as well as in other fields of work. He became a member of the Sydney band Rochette in 1970 and 1971, and he also gave a performance at the Odyssey Music Festival back in 1971. He also joined the band at this time period, and became a member of it. He was the producer of Bootleg's debut single, which was titled Whole World Should Slow Down, and it was originally published. In addition, he was one of the individuals who helped establish the record label that was known as Musical Expression. After Wright found himself in a position where he needed to pay for himself, he started working in a variety of vocations, including working as a process worker and as a member of the sales team in a boutique in Sydney. Eventually, he ended up being able to support himself financially. He was a part of the Rock and Roll Review, known as Like Fun in Perth, for a short period of time. Beginning in the later half of 1971, and continuing until the end of the year, he was a member of the Review. It was in 1972 when he moved to Sydney with the intention of becoming a member of the band Black Tank. This move ultimately led to his participation in the television special that was created by Auntie Jack Rock. Wright had a victorious comeback to the public spotlight in the middle of the year 1972 when he was cast in the part of Simon Zillardies in Harry M. Miller's critically renowned Australian version of Jesus Christ Superstar. This was a momentous occasion for Wright. It was Jim Sharman who was in charge of directing the show. The unexpected change of events came as a rude awakening to everyone here. The rock talents and stage charisma that he possessed were on full display during the entire amazing performance that he gave, which was supplemented by the outstanding celebrity house band. This performance brought back memories of his time spent with Easybeats, which he had previously held. This stay, which lasted for a period of 2 years, resulted in him being awarded a position on the original Australian cast CD that was published by Easybeats Records in 1973. This CD was issued in 1973. During this time period, he was also the receiver of favorable reviews from several sources. Nevertheless, this victory was bittersweet since it came at the same time as his spiral into heroin addiction, which ultimately led to his exit from the program in the late 1973 to early 1974 time period. These events occurred simultaneously. It was around the end of 1973 that Wright was successful in securing a contract with Albert Productions. As a result, he was able to reunite with Vanda and Young, who had previously worked with him. Both of them had been working as staff producers and composers in their respective roles, ever since they had returned from their trip to the United Kingdom. It was with his first band that Stevie Wright formed the live performance band that would later become known as the All Stars Band. The lead guitar was played by Tim Gaze, while Warren Morgan was responsible for the keyboards, and Johnny Dick was the drummer. On top of that, Warren Morgan was a drummer. Stevie Wright, who was also the leader of the band, was the one who led the band. In April of 1974, Vanda and Young were responsible for the conception and production of the song Evie, Parts 1, 2, and 3, which was included on his debut solo album, which was named Hard Road and was published. Vanda and Young were also responsible for the song's production. The single was included on the album that was made available to the public. This remarkable song, which is just 11 minutes long, is now considered to be a rock classic in Australia. This is due to the meteoric climb that it experienced to the top of the charts. This is as a result of the phenomenal amount of success that it has achieved. He was the climax of all that occurred, and Wright was the most successful of the 3 performances that took place on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. Wright was the most successful of the 3 performances. As a result of the participation of a number of excellent bandliners who performed at these occasions, the events that are regarded to be landmarks were able to be blessed by their presence. This event included a number of celebrities, including Harry Vanda, George Young and Malcolm Young of AC/DC, who were among the persons that played as headliners. This was the first time that the 3 ladies who had previously been a part of Easybeats had played live together as a group. Easybeats had been disbanded in 1969, and this was the first time that they had done so. It was the very first time that they had proceeded in this manner. With the release of Black Eyed Bruiser in 1975, Vanda and Young were responsible for producing yet another album that was released in that year. Nevertheless, despite the fact that it was released, it did not place among the top 50 albums in the album rankings. So, Vanda and Young, who were also responsible for the conception of this album, were engaged in the production of it. When John Paul Young was given the job of becoming the vocalist for the band, the All-Stars were transferred to him around the middle of 1975. He was also given the obligation of being the band's leader. While this was going on, Wright founded the Stevie Wright Band, which had players such as Tony Bolton on drums, Aesop's Fables Country Radio, Larry Jajiria on percussion, Russell Johnson on guitar, Billy Rylance on bass guitar and Peter White on keyboards. Other members of the band included Country Radio, Pete White and Larry Duryea. Furthermore, Country Radio was present at each and every one of the band's performances across the whole show calendar. Wright was apparently suffering from a terrible addiction that he had started while he was working in the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar in the year 1976. The musical Jesus Christ Superstar was performed in 1976. The individuals who have reported on the issue are the ones who have provided this information. It was at the time that he was working on the project that he first observed the beginnings of this addiction. Methadone therapy was administered to him after he was taken to the hospital in an effort to receive treatment. This was done in an effort to help him recover from his addiction. On the other hand, his mental health started to deteriorate at the time when he admitted himself to Chelmsford Private Hospital. Additionally, this is the other side of the coin. At that specific location, the psychiatrist Harry Bailey administered deep sleep therapy, which was a combination of drug-induced coma and electroconvulsive therapy. Deep sleep therapy was administered to several patients. So, there has been criticism directed at this treatment because of the contentious nature of the treatment itself. In accordance with the declaration, the objective of this treatment was to provide therapy for the treatment of addiction. Wright was one of the many patients who suffered from brain damage and long-term repercussions as a consequence of the event. A significant number of additional patients followed in his footsteps. The fact that the incident in question took place is one possible explanation for these phenomena. Unfortunately, Bailey took his own life as a direct result of the attention that was given to the matter, which ultimately resulted in the disagreement being brought to light. Throughout the course of the year 1982, Wright collaborated with Vanda and Young on the project that they were working on together, which was referred to as Flash in the Pan after it was completed. The vocals that Wright gave to the record that Vanda and Young were working on at the time were contributed by Wright. On that album, Wright's efforts were highlighted in many ways. Over the course of that year, a number of speculations began to spread regarding the possibility that Easybeats may reunite at some time in the future. These reports were about the possibility of Easybeats getting back together. Wright noted in his statement that there were conversations and interest from venues, however. The plans were ultimately abandoned owing to changes in the site for the event. 1983 was the year that saw the commencement of negotiations for a solo record, which also featured Vanda and Young as additional participants with their contributions. These conversations took place in 1983. Wright's life experiences were reflected in the album, which was characterized as a sophisticated rock and roll record. The description indicated that the album was a representation of such events. It was asserted that the album was a reflection of the events that Wright had throughout his life. Additionally, there were love songs that were included on the CD, and they presented a positive outlook on the subject matter. In spite of the fact that it was anticipated that the album would be published later on in that year, there was never a moment when it was really accessible for purchase, even though it was supposed to be released. When Wright was released from the Westmount Drug Rehabilitation Center in January 1984, he was charged with attempting to break into a house without the agreement of the occupants. This charge was made against him throughout the proceedings. He was brought into jail for the act of using heroin. He was brought into custody and placed in jail due to the fact that he had used heroin. In 1986, the Easybeats got together for a short time in order to embark on a tour of Australia. This tour was scheduled to take place in Australia. This vacation was supposed to be nothing more than a short-term adventure. During the years 1986 and 1988, Stevie Wright was the one who initially conceived of and established the Stevie Wright Band in a variety of various forms. During the time that the aforementioned events were taking place, this took its place. He was able to get help from his girlfriend, Faye Walker. Despite the fact that his drug abuse problems persisted throughout the 1980s and 1990s, bringing him to the verge of death many times, Faye Walker assisted him in overcoming his addiction to substances. The ability to supply him with encouragement was possessed by Faye Walker. The possibility of Faye Walker being of assistance to him existed. A journalist by the name of Jack Marks made the statement that the biography of Little Stevie Wright will be released in the year 1999. Sorry, The Wretched Tale of Little Stevie Wright was the name of the book that is being discussed here. A significant number of people were looking forward to reading this book from beginning to end. The biographies received favorable ratings from a number of critics, and one Australian music historian by the name of Clinton Walker lauded them as outstanding instances of gonzo journalism at its most exemplary level. You may locate the bios in this location. The contents of the book were not something that Wright, along with his followers and some detractors, found to be acceptable. According to these folks, Marx was a hypocrite who was only concerned with his own personal interests. They argued that he was just concerned with his own interests. Not just Wright, but also other critics did not like the book. Wright was not the only one who did not like it. One of the episodes of the documentary named The Long Way to the Top was shown on the Australian Broadcasting Corporation Operation ABC during the first year that this program was shown on television. In order to shed light on the experiences that both Harry Vander and Johnny Young have had while working in the music industry, it was necessary to conduct exclusive interviews with each of them. During these interviews, the experiences that each of them has had in their own right were brought to my attention. Wright was unable to execute the character of Evie while seated during the concert tour of the same name that was set to take place in August of 2002. This was due to the fact that Wright had received an ankle injury, which prevented him from performing the role. After the recordings from two concerts that took place in Sydney were shown on ABC television, the tapes were subsequently made available on DVD. The performances took place in Sydney. Sydney served as the location for the performances. Glenn Goldsmith is the author of the official biography of Stevie Wright, which was published in 2004 under the title Hard Road: The Life and Times of Stevie Wright. Goldsmith is the author of the biography. On July 14, 2005, the Easybeats of which Wright was a member, celebrated their accomplishments to the music business by being inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Australian Recording Business Association. This honor was bestowed upon the Easybeats in recognition of their achievements. There were a number of additional people that were a part of the band, including Normie Rowe, Smokey Dawson, Hunters and Collectors, and Renee Geyer, among others. A member of the band who was known as Split NZ was also a member of the band. The successes that Wright and his colleagues had achieved were ones that they had earned as a result of the hard work and commitment that they had put in. Wright was the main performer at the Legends of Rock Festival, which took place in Byron Bay on January 31, 2009. The festival was hosted this year. Additionally, Wright was the principal performer at the musical event that was being held. During the occasion, he sang a variety of songs, some of which were Sorry, I'll Make You Happy, Evie Part 2, Friday on My Mind, She's So Fine, and Wedding Ring. He also sang all of these songs from his repertoire. Kim Ferguson conducted an interview with him on Thursday, February 11, for the Sunday Groovies Show, which is a program that is broadcast on the Macquarie Regional Radio Show. The interview was scheduled to take place on Thursday. Wright claims that 2009 was a year that was both busy and hectic, with new content and melodies that had not been published before being anticipated to be released throughout the year. However, Wright claims that 2009 was a year that was both busy and furious. Wright describes 2009 as a year that was both exciting and stressful. He makes this claim based on his observations. Nicholas was the name of the kid that Wright and Gail Baxter finally had together after they were married. There was a period when Wright was married to Gail Baxter. To speak from a more personal perspective, Wright was a football player in the past. He had a career in the same sport. Faye Walker, with whom he had been in a committed relationship in the months leading up to his passing, had been a crucial figure in assisting him in overcoming the challenges he faced on account of his addiction. He is going to be sorely missed. Faye Walker had been there for him throughout the entirety of the process of his recuperation since the beginning of the procedure. He was an elderly guy who had retired and was living on the south coast of New South Wales at the time of week. He had been there for quite some time. Quite some time had passed since he had last been on the road. It was a considerable amount of time since he had arrived at that location. According to the healthcare staff, he was in a critical situation, suffering from renal illness in addition to liver troubles. He was also experiencing difficulties with his liver. Moria Hospital was the location where Wright died on December 27, 2015, as a result of the symptoms that are related with pneumonia. Several bad conditions led to this horrible sequence of events, which occurred as a result of those circumstances. At that point in time, the individual was 68 years old by that point. At the funeral ceremony that was conducted for him on January 8, 2016, it was held at St. Andrew's Cathedral in Sydney. His family and friends were present at the event. This particular occurrence took place on the 8th of January in this year. Despite the fact that the captivating story of Stevie Wright has officially come to an end, his legacy continues to shine brightly in the hearts of music enthusiasts all around the world. The circumstance is the same in every single location on the planet. The fact that he is no longer playing on stage does not alter the fact that his music continues to serve as an immortal reminder of the power of emotion and the tenacity of the human spirit. This is a truth that will never change. Alright, that's the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. See you next time.